Hey everyone, Kathy the Vegan Prepper here, and I'm going to be doing a little chat today while I'm doing some spinning. So let's get into it. Vegan Prepper. Vegan Prepper. All right, so what I've got here is my Turkish spindle. I've just been spinning. This is the second cop I've made in the last couple of months. The cop is the part that gets wound on to the spindle. And so I am actually getting ready to pull this off and start a new cop. And so I thought I would show some of that and kind of the way that I do it. I don't use a leader yarn, which is like some people will take a piece of yarn and tie it on and then twist it up so that they can start their next cop. And honestly, that's probably the easiest and best way to do it. But I don't know, I just hate doing that. I feel like it wastes the yarn, even though you can reuse it. But the thing is with the leader yarns, over time, they seem to get twisted and untwisted and twisted and untwisted, and they sort of wear out. Anyway, I'll just stop talking and I will show you guys what I am talking about. Okay, and so here I have my my spindle. I'm ready to take this cop off. And so this is a Turkish spindle. What's kind of cool about it is that it's you can disassemble it, and then when you've disassembled it, you have a cop that is a center pull ball, so it makes it really easy to then do the plying. Typically, if you're winding your cop on the shaft of a spindle, whether it's a bottom whirl or a top whirl, that means like the circle part is either up at the top or down at the bottom. If you're winding it on the shaft, a lot of times what you have to do is then wind it onto a bobbin or something before you ply, but this way you get to ply just straight from this ball. I'm not 100% sure that it is a time saver because winding this cop takes a lot of time to get all of the layers nice. And now you don't necessarily have to get all the layers super nice, but I find that it's less messy and it unwinds, or you know, the ball itself is neater and easier to ply from when you do it neatly. Anyway, I just kind of like it. I love that it's just all wood. It's really cool. This was a handmade spindle that I got. Anyway, yes, let's stop talking. So basically I am to the point where I'm going to go ahead and take this off. So I'm going to pull off my fiber that I'm currently working on. So that's just some old fiber. So y'all know I am vegan. This is technically, it's wool. I believe this is actually a combination of wool and alpaca, maybe. It's fiber that I carded myself kind of long ago. So I've been vegan now for, oh gosh, probably close to a little, like going on 5 years now. But I have been spinning for, gosh, probably about 12 years. So I just have stuff in my stash I haven't gotten rid of yet. I did just recently, like in the last year or so, I bought some flax that I want to learn how to spin. But for now, I'm still spinning my old wool. And so I'm still kind of working through that. But anyway, I don't know. People might get upset with me. But okay, so I'm going to go ahead and undo the little knot down here that's on the bottom. Although I don't know if that is what I should be doing. But see this right here, the knot at the bottom is now going to become the center pull part of the ball. And I think my daughter is calling me. Just a second. Okay, so I'm back. So now to get your cop back off, you pull the shaft out of the middle. It comes down. And then now you sort of, you see like it's this little thing. This is the one that's inside the other one. And sometimes, oh, it's just coming right out. You push one side out. And now you push, or you just pull this last piece out. And it's not always the easiest. Oh, there it goes. And now my little cop, they call it a turtle sometimes too, which is super cute because it does kind of look like a little turtle. And then now I could start plying, pulling this string from the middle down there. So it's just really cool. I kind of love I don't know, like it's just a really neat type of spindle and I really like it. And so it's probably my favorite type of spindle to use. And so basically you reassemble the pieces, and then you just sort of push to give pressure so that it's not going to like whirl around too much. And then this is the point where, like I was saying, somebody would tie a piece of yarn right here and then twist it up to start. That is not what I do. Let me see if I can get a clear view of what I'm doing here. I guess kind of overcomplicate things for myself. And I just sort of start drafting and twisting for my quote unquote leader, I guess. You can get a lot of twist built up, and then sort of pull and draft. And of course it's not working very well right now because I'm trying to show you. But you can get yourself enough, because you don't need a lot. You just basically need enough to get wrapped onto the shaft, is the way that I do it. And I'll show you exactly what I do. And so we're just kind of pulling and making. So all yarn and all string, for those of you not familiar with spinning, and this isn't meant to be like a spinning tutorial, all yarn and all string is just basically a function of twist in fibers. So that is what creates it. If you look really close at any string, any thread, even like for your sewing, so I've got like a little length right here, which is gonna work just fine for my purposes here. It's all just twist. And so it's just a very, I don't know. It's really cool to me. This is cool. This is something that humans have been doing for, thousands of years. If you think about like the history. So in order to get this started, I really hope this is going to work the first time. You do like a half hitch knot at the top. So I'm coming in, and then I don't know if it's clear at all or not, but you're just making this little knot now at the very top, which is what's going to hold this on. And then I'm realizing, okay, there we go. You start the twist, you start the spin down here. Let me get my fiber out of the way. And then now the twist, just sort of pulling it down. So as the spindle itself is spinning, it is making twist all the way up. And that is how this process works. Okay, so I've gotten a little bit more taken care of. And so just sort of wanted to chat about, what I'm thinking of while I'm spinning and doing all of this. For me, I go back to Proverbs 31. Because I've been pondering this a lot as I'm spinning again, and thinking a lot about the things that are kind of going on in the world. And so for me personally, just like with my faith, I believe how important it is to be praying and seeking God about, the direction of my life, the lives of my loved ones, and all of that. It's one of the things that I think some people might miss in the Proverbs 31 passage. And it gets glossed over, I think, because people are not familiar with spinning and kind of everything that it entails, but also how pervasive it was in the lives of women, and I think men too, long ago. That spinning was just a part of everyday life. Spinning was like the thing that you did when you were kind of either at rest or even walking, right? There are women still who live in I think in the Andes and probably other places in the world who still spin almost 24/7. Like, so much of their lives is about spinning and making fiber, or making threads, which are then made into yarns, woven into fabrics. It's still a huge part of their lives. You can see how long it takes, even though I personally have been spinning for about 12 years, I'm really slow compared to women who do this all day, every day. So like I mentioned, the women in the Andes, they're walking and spinning. They just spin as they walk and go about their tasks. So they walk to and from, various places, and every single one of them has fiber, and they're spinning as they're walking to create their thread, because not a second is wasted. It is a constant and necessary task in their lives. If you can imagine how difficult that would have been, right? To keep your family in clothes if you were the one responsible for spinning every single thread that went into your family's clothing. Now, granted, maybe sometimes it was kind of outsourced, or maybe certain people would be spinning and other people would take that fiber, but still, or that thread, but still, it used to be a huge part of people's lives. And so when you read Proverbs 31, I think it's really easy. It's specifically Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. I think it's very easy to, as a modern reader, kind of gloss over just how much of that passage talks about her spinning. It kind of comes up a lot. Like, she puts her hand to the distaff and the spindle. She buys wool and flax and works it with her hands. She's spinning. And then it later will talk about how she weaves cloths and she sells them in the market. It talks about how she's not afraid for the cold for her household, because all of her family is clothed in scarlet, is what a lot of translations say. But other translations, I think, maybe they offer a clarification. They say that all of her family is clothed in double layers. So that isn't just about like a specific color. It's like she's not afraid for winter because her family is clothed in double layers. And the reason is because she is constantly spinning. I think that the picture, and it's something that we would have known, had we been more connected to these ancient practices. This is, thousands of years of human history right here in spinning. We'd recognize what it's talking about. We would know that it's painting the picture of a woman who very likely was spinning nonstop, even as she's, selling her wares in the marketplace or whatever, that it's entirely likely that she is spinning while she's doing it. And it's a responsible picture, like a picture of a very responsible, conscientious person. She is spinning constantly. And even though I am a spinner, I wondered, kind of like talking to God about it and just sort of wondering for myself, like an allegorical example of like what is that like in modern times as a woman who seeks to be a Proverbs 31 woman, arguably the ideal woman of the Bible, who, by the way, is a working woman. She works outside the home, by the way. For anybody who thinks that ideal biblical women just like stay home all the time. No, she works outside the home. She's buying real estate. She's making stuff. She's selling it in the market. She's planting a vineyard from the profits of selling land and doing that. So it doesn't really talk about the vineyard, but why would she be planting that vineyard if she's, not necessarily, maybe like she's planning on getting into the winemaking business, so now she's planting a vineyard. Like, now she doesn't neglect her house, and then also it's not a point of guilt for those of us who do stay home. It's not like I have to feel guilty that I'm not a working woman like the Proverbs 31 woman was. But it says also, part of the passage, if you read, it says that she prepares portions for her servants. So her household is being taken care of by servants while she is off doing all of that other stuff. So it's not like a guilt thing, like, gee, I can barely manage to get my laundry put away in one day, but like I don't have servants running around helping. So it's like, really, if you look at it, but it's kind of fascinating to me personally. I don't know, like this culture of homemakers, like almost extreme, which I've seen on YouTube, some of them. Like, I consider myself a very deeply devout Christian, but it's like some of them they go into, gosh, how do I say, like fundamentalist. Like I've talked before, like even with my veganism, I don't consider myself like a fundamentalist, like a law blind vegan where I can't like look and think and make choices. So it's kind of like with this wool, I've had it since before I went vegan and I'm not getting rid of it, so I'm still using it. This is wool that I carded myself, I've been in this for a really long time and I have a stash. I'm not getting rid of it. But the ideal woman, arguably, of the Bible is a working woman. So we don't need to like women don't need to be made to feel guilty. Whatever choices they have made, either for themselves or because of circumstances, force them to make choices where they have to now work outside the home in order to support their family, or whether they want to because they have a calling on their lives. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like the Proverbs 31 woman, like I said, she's selling real estate. She's probably about to get into the wine business, but at the same time, she is spinning and she is taking care of her family in some of the most basic and fundamental ways. That spinning all day long. She's not afraid of the cold coming because her family is clothed in double layers. And so I think about that, and there's been times I've really pondered that, especially through seasons of my life when I was doing quite a lot of spinning. If I was preparing for a project, it's like just one project. It's incredible how much time it takes to spin yarn for just like one project, and I haven't even done something like a sweater yet, but it's just incredible how much time it takes. And you think that this used to be people's lives. They used to take this much time all of the time. But yeah, her family clothed in double layers, and I was kind of praying about it and asking God like if there's kind of a kind of a more modern thing to think about with something like that, because I think that the Bible is infinitely practical, but there's also, I think, a lot of spiritual things that are locked up in the kind of more practical presentations that are there. And the thing that came to my mind almost immediately was prayer, because it talks about, is it Thessalonians? Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in all things give thanks. It talks about prayer being a constant work. So this is not just like in the morning I have my prayer time. I see it more like a constant, necessary communion and communication with God, seeking his will for my life and then praying that out into my life, because it's like, what does he want to do? And it is up to us, I believe, and that's like a whole other discussion, because also people get like really, like, people talk about the will of God, and like, especially when it comes to prepping, I've seen people basically like say like they're not going to prep because they believe in God's will for their lives, and if God is sovereign and he wants them to live, they'll live, and if he wants them to die, they'll die. And like super fatalistic kind of passive attitude, but that is not at all I think even a biblical standpoint to take. Like, he gave us brains, he gave us dominion, which is a whole other conversation. And there's like a reason, like, we have authority on this earth, but like Jesus taught us to pray, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Like, it is our job to get his will into the earth, because he may be sovereign, he may have the ultimate victory, but I also wonder too, like, the people who think that God is fully 100% sovereign, then how do you explain all of the bad stuff that happens on the earth, right? Like, that gets talked about all of the time, and it's because God's will is not 100% done on the earth. Like, it's just not. I know this personally, like, as a child who suffered abuse and horrific things in my childhood. God was not the author of that abuse in my life. I had, people who were supposed to be taking care of me who did not. One particular person who was depraved and made bad choices, right? Terrible, evil choices. And that had nothing to do with God's will. God's will is for parents to love their children and take care of them and bring them up and give them a good environment and a good life. And that's not what happened to me. But that didn't have anything to do specifically with him. It was somebody making a bad choice, an evil choice, and choosing their own selfish whatever thing over the well-being of another, in this case, in my case, their child. So for me personally, it's also like a really great responsibility to think about, what is it that, like, am I making bad choices which are potentially affecting another person, bringing harm to another person because I can't get over my own selfishness. But yeah, that's like another topic for another time. It's a huge reason too why I am vegan, I know, is that sense of being unwilling to put my desires on, and like, I don't want this animal to die just because I like the way it tastes. Like, that's kind of a huge crux of my veganism, is not wanting my choices to inflict suffering on another being, even an animal, much less a human, right? So yeah, God's will is he's desiring to do good on the earth, but he needs for us, I believe, to partner with him, to seek out what is his will, and pray it into the world. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And God's will is goodness and perfection and joy and paradise, right? We see every place where God had his way, it was paradise. So originally in Eden and ultimately in heaven, it's paradise where God's will reigns supreme. But here on earth, humans are the ones that have sovereignty. They are the ones that have ultimately the say of what's going down on the earth, which is why it's so important for us to be submitted to and receiving kind of what God wants for us. And so that's like a lot of what I think about as I spin. Isn't that like funny? I think about that picture of spinning and then ultimately weaving. Literally the fabric of my life is woven through with prayer and with seeking God and trying to bring his will into my life and my family's life. Based upon that, seeking him and praying. And I'm not like over here. So I'm definitely one of those who believes in the power of faith and confession for changing and altering things. But I'm not over here saying that God wants to give me a Bentley or whatever. Like that's simplistic. It's a simplistic, really simplistic way of thinking. Like what is God's ultimate will? And Jesus says, right, all of the commandments can be boiled down essentially to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, or heart, mind, and strength, and then love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so those are the main purposes of life, is to love God and love other people and love ourselves, take care of people. And that is ultimately the purpose of all life. And so how simple that is, right? How much better would the world be if everyone would focus, even if they don't love God, if they would focus on loving other people like they love themselves? How much better would the world be? So anyway, yeah, I think the fabric of our lives gets created by our prayers. And so I think of prayer as a constant thing. And so naturally, of course, my mind turns to everything that's going on right now, right? Everything that's going on in Russia, the Ukraine, and China, and Taiwan, and all of that stuff. So I'm keeping up on it. I'm watching it, and I'm kind of aware. And so, like, am I stressed? Am I fearful? Well, ultimately, not so much. I'm not really overly concerned about food shortages and supply chain issues because we are, pretty well prepared, right? Like I have no fear of this for my household because all of my family is clothed in double layers. We have preparations in place to protect us against potential issues. But there's always something can always happen, right? The whatever government could decide to come steal food stores. People talk about all of these things and they get stressed. Ultimately, God does get his way, right? It's not like even should we face something where we lose our lives, ultimately God is still the one who wins because now I'm in heaven and I'm fine. And we feel pain over death because of separation, and it's a very real pain, which I know, of course, having lost my mother at the end of 2020, which is complicated and rife with things maybe I will talk about at some point in the future. But I was raised by my grandmother, but still losing my mother was a blow. But also in 2016, I lost a baby that Adam and I had, it was a surprise pregnancy, and I lost a little baby that just completely devastated us for years. In fact, she would have been born in February, which is funny. I have 2 kids with February birthdays, and my little baby that I lost would have been born in February. So I don't know, as a little window into vegan prepper operations here, when you see the end screen of all of my videos and it's purple, it's because of that. It's because of her. Because, you know, like I said, separation is painful because it's separation, right? Like, I'm separated from her right now. But I also know that in eternity, I will spend a complete entire eternity with her. And that is where the verse, you know, it says, and he will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more mourning and no more death. Like, in heaven, we will all be together, and it'll be endless, right? There's no comparison to this life and the time that we spend apart compared to how much time we're going to get together in heaven. And just as a clarification, not that it's like, I don't know, I don't want to belittle anyone's suffering, but for me, it was a miscarriage. I'm not talking about like having like a stillbirth or anything like that. But still, it was just completely devastating to us, and miscarriage can be very painful. But yeah, it's one of those things, right? And it's one of those little things that I'm not meaning to perpetuate sorrow or anything, but it's sort of one of those things. And I think a lot of people will understand, people who have miscarried or lost little children or whatever, is you do like little things in your life to remember them, not to like scratch in an old wound or perpetuate sorrow, but just sort of as a means of honoring them. And the fact that, you know, she basically disappeared, right? And nobody even knows that she existed. But she existed for me. She existed for Adam. And so I just do like a little thing like that, like making the little ending purple, because the February birthstone is amethyst. And so that is just like a little homage, and it's just from my heart. And unless you're watching this video, you would never know that that's what that's about, but that is what that is about. And we have little amethyst, little pieces of amethyst in the house, and those are just kind of representative of our daughter. And, you know, as long as we live, we will carry her memory. And yeah, I don't believe God was the author of that either. The point that I want to make by even sharing all of that was the time too that I was in the kitchen, and I remember just crying and crying and crying. And it was like I got stuck in an obsessive thought pattern. I don't know if you know what I mean, where all I could say, because I knew that God didn't steal my child. It's the enemy, right? The thief is the one who comes to steal and kill and destroy, not God. But I just remember praying, and I was kind of almost rocking back and forth and just sort of in the throes of grief and saying, he stole my baby, he stole my baby, he stole my baby. And I meant the enemy. And in the middle of that, God just interrupted and said, he didn't get your baby. I have your baby. And I realized, of course, he's not saying that he stole my child, but like realizing, oh, so like, even though this bad thing happened, and that the thief came and stole, the thief doesn't get to keep what he stole. If that makes sense. Like, it was a really distinctive and important turning point for me in my grief, to recognize that even though technically I had had a child stolen from me, God is the one who has the child now. And I will go back, and one day I will experience an entire eternity with her. And the separation won't have mattered, right? It will be something that will just be forgotten, right? Every tear wiped away from our eyes. No more mourning, no more death. So yeah, anyway. But it's really important, I think, to be focused on prayer, on finding out that doesn't mean that bad things won't still happen in our lives. So even like with everything going on in the world right now, who knows? Bad stuff could happen in our lives. Who knows? A new disease could rip through and kill a bunch of people close to us. We could see one that has a much higher mortality rate than the one that just went through and is still going through, still devastating people. And what do we say? You know, the thief comes and he steals, but ultimately he doesn't get to keep what he steals, and God still has the ultimate victory. So I don't know, I rest in those thoughts. I try really hard not to get caught up in too much of the fear and the anxiety. Like I've said many times on this channel, like for me, the prepping is all about that kind of Proverbs 31 drive of that woman to prepare for and make her family secure. So I will try to make us as secure as possible, for as long as possible, and also ultimately be keeping my focus, I feel like, where it should be, which is loving God, loving people, preparing as much as I can, trying to share that. So I don't know. Yeah, that's what I think about when I spin. But I will, I guess, bring more of this content if anyone is even remotely interested, and I could do some videos that are like more focused on spinning and how to do that. I think it's a valuable skill. I think it's an incredibly valuable skill to know how to make your own yarn and knit something. And I would love to get more into actually learning how to process the fibers myself. Like I do know how to take a raw wool, but clean. I haven't ever experienced cleaning the wool myself, but I have experienced just taking raw wool and then carding it. Like I said, I made this myself and carded it. I've done plenty of carding. I actually still have my hand cards for carding wool and stuff. I've used the drum carder, but I don't have one of those myself. And it's an extremely valuable thing to have. But what I would really love to learn, I've been wanting to learn even before I went vegan, but I really want to learn how to process my own plant fibers and create yarn from plant fibers, because I feel like that is also kind of an incredible skill. I do have that flax in my hope. It's an organic flax that I purchased. I want to learn how to spin it, and I would love to learn how to spin my own candle wicking. So like, why? I don't know, because these are things I'm interested in. I love to learn how to do, the entire process myself. I love to know how to do absolutely everything from start to finish, and I've always been this way. Just so like if I ever had to, I could, so anyway. All right, that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully, I don't know if that was entertaining or helpful or anything, or a blessing. Hopefully it was at least a blessing. And yeah, I guess I'll bring back, or I'll talk a little bit more about spinning and stuff, but if you want to say anything or talk about anything in the comments below, go ahead, feel free to let me know what you think. And especially because I know that there are a lot of non-vegans who watch the channel, and I know there's also a lot of non-Christians who watch the channel, so very interested to hear what anybody thinks about any of that. And like I said, just pray. Prayer is so important. It's powerful in and of itself. It is powerful. And it doesn't mean that we sit around and never do anything else, because that would be silly. God created us for purposes on the earth. Like, we need to actually go ahead and do things and take care of things. But prayer is extremely powerful, and I think it's something that we should make sure we never neglect in our lives. Make it as constant as the spinning used to be for women and men, I'm sure, around the world. So anyway, those are my thoughts. And as always, I hope the rest of your day is good and your life stays wonderful. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.